Welcome to episode 472 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Nick Hilton, and I have the pleasure of being joined again by Ines Braga Sampaio from Renascença. I got through it. I did it right. I think I got it, Ines, but this is the second time I got to practice it. But today we are previewing the Women's Champions League final between the Barça Femení and Wolfsburg. And so the first and most important question, though, because it has been the whole season. How's it going, Ines?
Well, hey there. Thank you, first of all, for the invite. It's great to be back here. Barcelona's season has been going very, very well, of course, apart from, getting knocked out from the Copa de la Reina because of, from off the field, because of off the field issues, that irregular use of gaze. But, when a team is so dominant internally, I think their season, the be all end all of the season is a Champions League. So if they don't win the Champions League, then it's not going to be a fully successful season. It's their main goal. So I think it all hangs in the balance, for this one game.
Yeah, we're diving right in. We're jumping right in because these are the stakes of it. So let's set the scene just a little bit. It's tomorrow, 10 a.m. here in New York, 4 p.m. Barcelona time on Saturday, that being tomorrow, and it will take place at PSV Stadium in Eindhoven, the Philips Stadion, which can sit about 35,000 people. And while that number won't be close to the Femini's matches at the Camp Nou, obviously almost 60,000 less people at the Champions League final potentially than what was at the Camp Nou for the Femení match, especially that El Clasico. It should still be a great atmosphere. What do you think of the location, Ines, and just I guess we'll say the progression with bigger and bigger stadiums for this Women's Champions League final over the last few seasons?
I think it's important to say, first of all, that the Netherlands are a great footballing country. So I don't want anyone to take me wrong in this sense. But the truth is, the stadium is too small, because I fully believe that these two teams that are so big in women's football, they could have filled up a bigger stadium, and I'm not asking for like 80,000 seats. I'm asking for like 60,000 seats. That one would be full. So it's a pity, but still, the Netherlands, again, it's a great footballing country, and its fans are very passionate. Fans of both teams are very passionate as well. So I think they will make the most of what they have. I wish that they would have a little bit more, and I think UEFA have been a little, they've lacked in foresight, considering the amount of crowd that that women's football has been able to garner. So I wish that they would have had the foresight to realize that, okay, this is maybe too small for how big it is right now for such a big game. Because okay, smaller games, of course, they don't have as much crowd, but the turnover for big games has been amazing. Like the final of the women's Euro had the most crowd in like all of the Euros, men and women. So you have to start having this the awareness that, yeah, big games are gonna have a big crowd. So 35,000 people is not big enough for how big this game is.
Yeah, we've seen some big crowds this season. Like I already mentioned, of course, at the Camp Nou, but Arsenal had a huge record-breaking
Exactly.
crowd for them in the UK. We've seen PSG Lyon, when those two teams played each other this year, was a huge match, huge numbers. Bayern Munich against Wolfsburg, which we'll get to, huge numbers for that one as well. So we're now focusing on Barca for a bit, then we'll work on Wolfsburg. As you mentioned, Barcelona heading into this, I think is going to be a main theme here. They are the favorites on paper, and just overall, not just because this is a Barcelona podcast, not just because this is Kool-Aid, but Barcelona is the favorite on paper. And also, even historically, we'll go through it here a little bit. This is Barca's third time in the final, twice losing to Lyon and once winning it all. And it's Wolfsburg's sixth time in the final. Their only wins coming in 2013 and 2014, so it's been a while for them. And oddly enough, that 2014 season saw these two meet in Europe, and Barcelona having just professionalized, having just really inaugurated their step forward into European football. They were beaten 5-0 over the two legs in the quarterfinals. Now, obviously, that was 10 years ago, and in Barça Femení time, that is, that is BC to AD. It's not the same thing. So this season, Barca got to the final by topping their group and then beating Roma and narrowly beating Chelsea in the semifinal. Wolfsburg also topped their group and beat PSG and Arsenal 5-4 extra time in London. That was definitely the game to watch in the semifinal in that second leg, and that got them to the final. So, Ines, do you think though, and this question is loaded with other questions too, do you think the two best teams in Europe made the final this season in Barcelona and Wolfsburg, or did you feel like two other teams might have deserved it? Because I felt like Wolfsburg were probably the underdogs against Arsenal too. Not to show my hand a little bit too much there.
I think one of the two, three. Well, this is a loaded question. I think they were the most informed teams of the season, maybe, and European at European level, at international level specifically, because Wolfsburg lost the league to Bayern. So and they were the teams that were the most able to to face off against like powered opponents. And I do think, and I know I'm entering a little bit into Wolfsburg field here, but I do think that Wolfsburg is the most dangerous team that could have, showed up in the final, in terms of like how Barcelona plays, how they play, the face-off. I think this is the most dangerous team possible this season for Barcelona. I think it was so level with Arsenal, but I think Arsenal would have had a lot, a much more difficult time facing off Barcelona than Wolfsburg will have, in my opinion. I think it's how the teams fit, how they play, also Wolfsburg's experience at the highest level, because the truth is Barcelona are favorites for their recent history. And it's true that like 10 years ago is like a century in Barcelona terms, but the truth is Wolfsburg are historically the better team, because they've been here for longer, and they've had success for longer. So it's very much like last year's final. It's very much a duel between history and the now, but Wolfsburg are strong now too. So, but yes, I do think these were the strongest teams in the Champions League this year. The ones that that showed that they could face off against smaller opponents, but also beat the stronger ones. So yeah, I think this is the most balanced final we could have had, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that the team I should say that I think everyone is asking about, well, if it's Wolfsburg and Barça Femení, that means that Lyon must be somewhere. Where is Lyon? And the answer to that question is now everybody has injuries, especially in the women's game this year. There was a ton of injuries everywhere to major players. But when I say Lyon had a lot of injuries, I mean Lyon had a lot of injuries, as
Yes.
in where almost 40% of their team at any moment was on the sideline for months at a time. So Lyon did wind up losing to Chelsea in the quarterfinal. So neither Barca nor Wolfsburg even had to go through Lyon to get there. Because I do believe that even though Lyon had all those injuries and on paper again was struggling this year, they must have somewhat of a mental edge against Barca and Wolfsburg, because basically the one team who keeps beating Barca and Wolfsburg
Exactly.
is Lyon when they're in their form. So I think Lyon might have had some kind of a mental edge, but again, I think both these teams fortunate just to dodge that and get away from them. So speaking of history, by the way, too, 2019, 2020, and one of the reasons why I think this we'll say the balance of powers have shifted between Wolfsburg and Barcelona in recent years is that going back to 1920, Wolfsburg snuck by Barca with a 1-0 win. The goal scored by Fridolina Rolfa, then playing for Wolfsburg, now playing for Barça Femení, of course. Then for the next season, 2021, Barca and Wolfsburg meet in the semifinal, and it's Barcelona walloping the Germans 5-1 at home and not being too bothered by the 2-0 loss in Germany because it was pretty much already wrapped up by that point. And since that time, well, not since then, but in the years both prior to and including, Caroline Graham Hansen, Ingrid Engen, and Rolfo all signed for Barcelona from Wolfsburg. And I think that does bring up a bit of, as you mentioned, I mean, Wolfsburg and Barcelona, they know each other quite well at this point. They've met in recent years. Again, the overlap of players as well can't be understated. That I mean, you could do Caroline Hansen a little bit here, but she's going to be a main focus of many of my other questions as well as we move forward. So I think just the question would be, how well do you think these two teams do know each other, and how will that play into this final?
I think, well, yeah, they know each other very well. Like you said, Engen, Holfo, Graham Hansen have been in both teams. Then you have like a player like Jill Ward, who, by the way, is a Barca fan. Not that plays
Yeah,
into it in at all, but it's just it's just a factoid. But she's a very Barca-like player as well. I think they know each other very well. I think they fit, like in terms of game and in how they play, they fit very well together. And that's also why I think it'll be so difficult for Barcelona. I think that's also why it's one of the opponents, the toughest opponents that Barcelona could have had in terms of like, how you compare one team to the other, how one team can play against the other's strengths and weaknesses. Apart from Lyon, of course, but Lyon, like you said, has had a ton of injuries. I think Lyon and Arsenal were the most affected teams in that sense. And that's also why I wouldn't say Lyon have been one of the best teams of the season, because they were so depleted
yeah,
injury wise. But yeah, I mean, I think again, Barcelona and Wolfsburg have played each other plenty. They that interchangeability of players also. And when you're two teams that are constantly at the top level, playing the most important games, that also leads to possibilities of studying each other, and always, you're always bound to maybe face off. So I think it's like two old rivals playing each other, and there's not
yeah.
much that one can do to surprise the other, unless I do think there may be a card up Jonathan Giraldez's sleeve, which is maybe Alexia as number 9. I am waiting
Well, we'll get
for
into that in a second. Yeah.
exactly, but other than that, it's again, they know each other very well. It's going to be a very tough final for both.
Well, the interesting thing is too, both of these teams, for as much as they will say earned and deserved their spot in the final, they both have, not to say taken off in recent weeks, but in their league they have both limped to the finish line, and that is almost a compliment. For Barcelona, it is tough because they lost one match, their first loss in the league all of this season. And I think we're almost 15 minutes in, and people have probably been screaming this entire time for this question. Is one of the big elephants in the room is that Barcelona again just conceded a recent loss in Liga to Real Madrid. And so my first question is, how worried are you about that loss that just took place to go into the Champions League final, having lost just 2 matches all season long for the Barça Femení, but to head into the Champions League final with their first loss this season in the league does not seem to be good timing. But do you put any stock in that loss at all?
Well, I mean, you always have to consider bad results, but at the same time, I mean, it's when you're not playing for anything anymore, it's tough to keep the players motivated to keep the players playing to the best of their capabilities. And the truth is, they were champions already. That's like and they couldn't do anything in the Copa de la Reina again because they were out. So it's been very much a waiting game for them, and I that's what may be dangerous actually. It's not the loss, it's what the loss means. It's why the loss happened, because
Mm,
they've been in a non-competitive context for a while since they became champions. Because the truth is, they haven't played for anything really since they became champions and since they qualified for the final. So you know how like I don't like mentioning the men's game when we're talking about the women's game, but it reminds me sort of PSG in the French league. How their season pretty much, amounts to, okay, getting the winning the league, and then it's the Champions League mostly. So like when you're in a context that is not competitive enough, not because of because the Spanish league isn't competitive enough, it's because they won, and then they had a bunch of games where they were playing for absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
That can lead to relaxation, and that can and not keeping those levels of competitiveness, and and doing everything all the time, constantly, that can lead to to some faltering, and that's what happened. That's why that loss happened, in my opinion. um, and that is what can be dangerous for the final, because whereas Wolfsburg had to fight for the title in the Bundesliga, till the very end, because Bayern
Yeah.
became champions at the very last moment. Barcelona have been just playing for the sake of playing for a while, and that can be dangerous, because physically, even it can lead to so yeah, in terms of mentality, physicality, yeah, it can lead to some I mean, one team as is at the top of their game currently, even if they had some not so good results, but they're at the top
Yeah.
of their game in terms of like competing, and the other has
Yeah.
been waiting for this game for a while. So that can be dangerous, yes.
Well, let's jump right into how Barcelona will likely line up in this contest, and I think the attention begins with the midfield. Certainly between Patry, Kiera Walsh, Ingrid Engen, Aitana Bonmati, of course, Alexi Putellas, those five names in particular. Who do you think Jonathan Garaldes is going to start for this game? Because from my view, I think for this game, the starting trio kind of does pick themselves more than any other. But I mean, and when I say that, I mean in with Patry, Walsh, and Aitana. Like that's what I would expect. But as you just mentioned, with Alexia kind of being the wrinkle here, that's also the question where it's like, are you going to bench Alexi Putellas or have her come off the bench, regardless of the fact that she is still working her way back? It should not be understated. She is still working her way back from the ACL injury, has not started a match yet since she returned from that injury. So, what kind of contribution are you expecting from Alexi Putellas in this game? Because again, I think on paper, I don't understand how Patry, Walsh, and Aitana are not that starting midfield trio. And I know, again, you can even add Lucy Bronze to this too, because of the way that she inverts into that midfield in some of that buildup and her fitness as well. She's also coming back from an injury. And so questions of how much is Barcelona getting out of Alexia and Lucy Bronze, I think wind up being this bigger question than anything else.
Well, that is a big question. Alexia, I think, okay, this is like, I hate doing predictions because I could be totally wrong, and I'm not in Geraldes's mind, but I do think she's going to start, but I think she's not going to start in midfield. I think that's going to be like the big card up Geraldes's sleeve. That's going to be the big surprise. I think she'll start as the number 9. And Oshoala didn't train today, so that's feeding into my guess even more. So I think it'll be between Marta and Bronze in the right wing, and then of course Mati and Paredes, Rolfo on the left, of course, and then the midfield trio is going to be Patry, Kira, and Aitana, and then you're going to have on the right, obviously CGH, Caroline Graham Hansen, and then on the left it's I'm gonna
That's the question.
I'm gonna
Yeah, the left is the question.
I'm gonna go for Mariona, and this is purely because I am a huge fan of Mariona, and so I would say Mariona every day, all day, every day. So I'm gonna say Mariona on the left, just personal preference purely, and then Alexia's number 9 as well, number 9,
Hmm.
between quotation marks, because I think she's gonna be more like a false 9, but yeah, that's how I think they'll line up. We'll see. But I think that their experiment that Giraldes did with Alexia as number 9 against Madrid CFF, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's how he's gonna go, and I think that's gonna be his big, shake up to try and fool Wolfsburg a bit. But we'll see. It's my best guess.
Yeah, I mean, and for those who might have been watching so much this year, you said Rolfo at left back. Obviously, is what you said, and that's true. That she's been playing as that left, not even left back, but more of a left wing
Yeah,
back because
exactly.
Barcelona has so much possession that she's just up there upfield all the time, is scoring goals. Basically, it's the same player occupying the same space, except she's also expected to defend, which physically she's more than capable
Yeah,
of doing that in the game.
and she melds very well with Mariona, in my opinion, because Mariona
Mm.
goes into inner terrains and goes to the defense. I mean, Mariona is a what you would call like she I'm missing the word right now, but she goes. Yeah, and she goes around the field. She pops up everywhere, and that makes space for Hopeful to go up the wing. And then on the other side, it's sort of it's a very asymmetrical team for a purpose, of course, because on the other side you have Bronze again, like you said, who goes into the midfield a lot, and Caroline, sorry, Caroline Graham Hansen is much more vertical than Mariona. So I love that as asymmetricality. And I think that's why I choose this starting 11 because it plays so well. It's so fluid, and you can have two extra midfielders at any time, three extra midfielders if you put Alexia up front. So I think they're gonna try and dominate the midfield as they always do, of course, but with numbers as well as their wonderful dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, it is the two former Wolfsburg players in Caroline Graham Hansen and Rolfo who add so much of that verticality, as you mentioned. And I mean, Rolfo was just a pair of lungs. I mean, she has an ability to get up and cover space and to defend in that space as well, especially when Barcelona are taking that line of confrontation. And of course, I mean, we've kind of been tiptoeing around it, but it's pretty simple here that especially if you start Alexi Putellas as the number 9, that is an admission that Barcelona know they're going to be high field. They know they're going to have to break down what is going to likely be a medium to low block that Wolfsburg is going to play, that they're going to try to counterattack out of, as you mentioned, those different styles. And even against Arsenal, Wolfsburg, while Arsenal had all those injuries, it got 50-50 in extra time and things like that. But the way that first leg started, it was Wolfsburg kind of in their shell, giving maybe too much credit to Arsenal and then trying to come out of their shell in that way. And I think being clinical, as you mentioned, especially if Aswala is not fit, being clinical is going to be essential and expecting there is tons of midfield scoring, especially in the Champions League finals. Aitana, I mean, that's how she made her name in the last Champions League final win. Alexi Putellas scoring goals and things like that. But I think up top, as far as forwards maybe being the ones to even break through here, you mentioned that Mariona would be your starter, but she isn't the only option. There's Gese, there's, again, Aswala would be a shock fit, but I mean, potentially, and then Salma as well. And then the big name for me, which again, I think is to say the X factor of the season, maybe the X factor of the final, is Claudia Pina, very much like Bronze and Alexia, coming back from injury, still not fit. And Claudia Pina before her injury to Claudia Pina after her injury is not to say night and day, but she hasn't, to me, of what I've seen, looked right yet. But as far as an X factor coming off the bench, there is something to be said about because when you talk about mentality, right? And I love going and referencing the Alexi Putellas stuff. How after they win, she goes, "Well, we just want to keep killing them. We just want to keep winning. We don't want to stop." Claudio Pina is, I think, maybe number 2 or 3 on the team in terms of that just tenacious desire for wins at all times. She is.
That
She is.
ruthlessness. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Graham Hansen, Claudia Pina, like that is a ruthless. That's the perfect word. That's a ruthlessness that she has. And I think if there's a young player that's going to say, I don't care about these bright lights. I didn't win that first final. I wasn't a part of that. So this is my final. I want to win this. Claudia Pina also very much like Mariona, very much like Alexia. There is a versatility to her game. And I think when Barcelona, honestly, without Alexia early in the season, were at their best was when it was Claudia Pina as that number 9. I felt like that is when they moved the ball the best. That is when they're most dangerous. So there is this world where Barcelona say, well, I know that Bronze and Alexia and and Claudia Pina, especially in league, they haven't looked right. They haven't looked at what they were expected to look. But there is this world on a very, positive way that Barcelona just does have everything clicked together and are the team that have been the best in Europe this season, with the exception, again, of those two losses or those moments or those injuries or things like that, because they have the potential to have everybody except for Aswala.
No, exactly. It's actually it's they're two very strong squads, both Wolfsburg's and Barcelona's, and I think overall, like I said, overall, where you can have, where you can leave Alexia, Bronze, Bina, Oshawala on the bench. That is saying something, because those four players would play, in almost every team in the world like this.
Mm-hmm.
And but Wolfsburg also have a very strong squad. I mean, they can also have the luxury of leaving Hillebrand, who is one of my favorite players in the world right now. She's on the bench. She's not a starter, and she's fantastic. So again, it's a face off between two of the strongest squads in the world. But I do think that Barcelona were the strongest team throughout the season. But again, it's a final. Anything can happen, and I think that, like you said, the mentality of it. Barcelona have those players that can, it's not enough to beat them. They have to kill them. And But Wolfsburg also have very, very strong players mentally. You have the likes of Pop, Rord, players who are so experienced. And Rord is very young, but she's very experienced, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like ice runs through their veins. They're two, despite how they play, and they both play beautifully, in my opinion. They're two very cold teams in terms of how they face challenges head on. So again, and that's also why I think Wolfsburg is the toughest opponent that Barcelona could have gotten at the moment, because they don't crumble under pressure. But neither does Barcelona. So again, it's I think it's going to be a very tight match.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get to Wolfsburg in just a second because we're almost finished with Barcelona
Yeah.
here, but I do want to focus on the back line for just a moment here. It does feel like Mappy Leon, who is still all of 27. So depending on when you jumped on board with the Barça Femení, it feels like Mappy Leon has been there forever, but she is still just 27. And the addition of Irene Paredes meant that Mappy wouldn't have it all on her shoulders and would allow her to be, not to say less of a defender, but less of a defender than she wants to be. Like, we know that Mappy Leon is an attacking player in a defender's body, and Irene Paredes has allowed her to just really, really flourish on with the ball. Obviously, Barcelona usually has the ball, but on that side of the field. And it's, I think, been really interesting the way that she has raised her game more than I think Paredes has changed things on that back line for them. I think, not that say that Barcelona are that Paredes didn't improve it or help lock something down. Their partnership has been good, but I think it's been interesting that Mappy Leon is the one that really has benefited from that partnership, even more so than I think Irene Paredes came and was. I mean, she was a reigning best World 11 player from PSG last season, signing for Barcelona, but I don't think she's been that this year. But I think, again, Mappy Leon certainly has still been.
I think you said it right. I think Paredes served as an unlocker. She unlocked Mappy Leon. So she gave Mappy more freedom, and by giving her more freedom, Mappy has managed to, it's not develop so much as like expose, all the qualities that she has, passing wise, shooting wise, etc. Because she's a builder as well as a defender, and I think Paredes has allowed Mappy to flourish in her game. She's had those qualities all along, but with and I love Pereira, but she is not as strong a defender as Paredes. And when you have
Mm-hmm.
like it's like when you have a rock behind you, holding everything together, it's easier to step forward and take more risks. And of course, that also leads to more risk taking on Barcelona's part in general. But I think, yeah, I mean, Paredes hasn't. It's not like she didn't come here to come here or to Iberia to be the star. I think, yeah, she unlocked Mapi Leon. She was like, okay, they were like, you're here, to well, yeah, again, to give Mapi Leon that security to go forward, to flourish, to show all these qualities that she has. She hasn't been able to, to um, like show as much when she had another partner in the center of defense. So I think it's been an ideal partnership in that sense, that they complement each other very well, and it has allowed Mapi Leon to flourish really.
Yeah, I mean, and they're going to have their hands full, as you mentioned. So just real quick on Wolfsburg, who, as I said, they not only lost Graham Hansen to Barca in recent seasons, but also Pernell Harder to Chelsea. So it is almost, with the names they've lost in recent seasons, and interesting enough, Wolfsburg going and kicking Harder out of the tournament was probably something a little sweet for some of them as well. But this season, as you mentioned, they didn't even win the title in Germany, and they have had some worrisome results in recent weeks. They lost 4-0, not 1-0 or 2-1. They lost 4-0 to Eintracht Frankfurt just over 2 weeks ago. And as you mentioned, Bayern Munich snuck by them for that title just at the last moment. But as you said, they still have plenty of talent. And who Mapi Leon and Paredes, and whether it's Bronze or Marta Torrejon on the right side and Orolfo on the left, Alexander Pop is going to be a problem up top that they're going to have to deal with. And then you mentioned they have ice in their veins, but I'm not saying literal ice, but the Icelandic forward in Jean Dodier, and again, pronunciations and apologies to our Icelandic fans, but she is going to be on the left wing, which is interesting because she was on the right wing. They move her over to the left side, and she's really flourishing there. And stylistically, they're kind of giving the game away already, especially with those two in recent weeks. They're saying Pop and John Stodier are going to win this game for us. We're going to counterattack, especially on the left. We're going to attack that space if Bronze thinks she wants to come in the middle. If she, again, it is Bronze starting. Even Torrejon, if they in any way try to help with build-up coming inside, we're going to try to pop a ball over the top because Jones Dodier has speed to burn, certainly. She is so quick, so fast, and get in behind. And I don't know, Ines, I feel like this is one of those weird examples where I know you said there's an ace up the Barcelona sleeve, but I feel like we know what Wolfsburg's going to do. We know what Barcelona's going to do. And we know if Wolfsburg win 2-0, we know how it happened. If Barcelona win 3-0, we know exactly how it happened. I feel like stylistically, this game is going to play out the way we think it is. And it's which team is going to, let's say, execute their game plan better. As you know, and I don't want to say it's as simple and straightforward as that, but it just feels like because of personnel and things like that, it feels like both these teams, if they played at their strengths, they're very different from one another, as you mentioned. There's a great juxtaposition in styles, and the winner of their style is going to win this final.
Yeah, exactly. I remember like there was a team. There was a Portuguese team. Um, it's a men's team again, but I think it's a perfect example because it's Sporting Portugal, and coaches that play Sporting Portugal usually say this: we all know how they play, but it's very tough to stop them. And that is a perfect description of Wolfsburg because we all know how Wolfsburg plays, but it's very difficult to stop them. It's very difficult to stop their game. And yes, they've had that worrisome defeat against Eintracht. But the thing is, if you look at Wolfsburg's games this season against top teams, and I'm saying Bayern, PSG, Arsenal, they've lost one game, and it's been they tied with Arsenal. Yes, they beat Bayern twice. They lost one against Bayern. They also walked past PSG. So with teams that are at their level, I think they're one of the toughest sides to beat in European football at the moment. And again, they have, like I said, they have Jans Dottir, who is not only super fast, she's also very, very skilled on the ball. And, that triangle in the midfield that with, now I'm forgetting, with Svenja Huth, Jill Ward, and Alexandra Pop those three, which is funny because Alexandra Pop usually plays as the number 10, but we've seen her occupy the number 6 position sometimes, during games. And, I think Pop is such a goal scorer and so experienced. Rord, also a great goal scorer. You have Eva Payar, who up top was, I mean, she's tremendous. And with such a team, you can really, can really overlook them. And like you said, I think it's going to be a matter of who applies their game style better and who also explores the other team's weaknesses, because both teams have weaknesses better. For example, like you said, Jonsdottir facing off against Brons or Marta, two players who are not as fast nowadays as they used to be. When you have such a speedster against those two players, it can lead to various problems. But also, on the other hand, Barcelona can explore Dominic Jensen, who is very, very skilled on the ball. She's very much a builder, like Mapi Leon, but defensively, she's not very solid. Although I really like her. This is not to criticize her, but she's not as strong defensively as she is in other areas of her game. So to have, and again, when you have an attack like Eva Payar, Alexandra Pop, Vasmut, Jonsdottir, and you can leave Jule Brand on the bench. And against Arsenal, she started on the bench and came on, and I think she came on too late, by the way, but she came on and changed the game completely. So, well, yeah, I mean, it's very tough to say who is going to win, to make a solid prediction, because when you have that attacking talent, but also that talent, in terms of like how they play, because both teams play very well, but both teams have a very, very solid, style. I think Wolfsburg are the most versatile team in terms of how they adapt to the other team. They are very comfortable playing with on and off the ball, being the more dominant team, but also being more expectant and being exploring counterattack more. They're very, very comfortable in both those roles, which can be dangerous for Barcelona. But I agree with you. It's going to be a matter of executing game plan and exploring the other team's weaknesses, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the prediction game, but this is a safe space for the Barcelona side of things, so let me make a prediction here. I'm not going to give you a score or anything like that, but I think the face and the name that people are going to be talking about is Caroline Graham-Hansen. I think the narrative just sets up perfectly. I think she's been the best player for Barcelona this season, and I think arguably she's been the best player in Europe this season. So she's fit right now, and that is what you want. You want to fit Caroline Graham-Hansen. And the narrative with former Wolfsburg player, she knows some of the women over there. So my prediction is that, yeah, Caroline Graham-Hansen is the face and the person and the name that is going to come out with her stock rising the most next season because of this one game. So that's my prediction. That I mean, obviously that means I'm also tipping my hand as who I think will win this match. But I do think Caroline Graham-Hansen is going to be the difference. Whether it's 1 goal or 2 goals or probably not more than that. Wolfsburg, I give him more credit than that, but so that's where I see this one going. But Ines, thank you so much for coming on, helping to preview. I hope this excited everybody, and of course we'll be hearing from you shortly. But yeah, I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks.